Hey YouTube, Longboys Post 1975. Funky question, I know. Did you ever play a game as a kid because it made you feel grown up? It may seem like this question came a little bit out of left field, but I heard about I heard the title of a game I hadn't thought about in a few years, and just the mention of this title just makes me have a massive sort of flashback to playing it as a kid, and the nostalgic feelings I had towards it, and what it meant to me and why I loved it slightly more than other games at the time. Now, how it came up was I was driving a friend from work home this morning, and the person I normally give a lift to didn't need a lift, so I was driving someone else home because the route I had to take wasn't, dictated by where I had to go, and the buses in Bristol are shite, so I thought, well, give this person a lift home. And they are a retro gamer, and it's just funny because he knows I am, and I actually stalled my car. I haven't done that in a while. Stalled my car, and I had to put it into neutral and start it again, and he laughed, and he looked at me and he said, "Dude, you shift like Hard Drivin." And it's funny because I actually just, Hard Drivin just popped into my head, and I was just, oh my god, Hard Drivin. I absolutely loved Hard Drivin back in the day. Not necessarily because it was an amazing game, but because of what it let me do, or what it let me try and, to do something that at that particular time in my life I wasn't allowed to do. I'm waffling a bit. It's funny, right, because the irony here is, as adults, those of us who retro game, and I'm not saying I'm having a midlife crisis, I'm happy with who I am, where I am and where I'm going, but we look back affectionately to being a child, and we have these great warm nostalgic feelings toward the games we play, and also just childhood in general. But it's funny because as a child you seem to spend most of your time looking forward, or I did, to all the things you wanted to grow up, which is a shame. You wanted to grow up to achieve or try to do all these things that you weren't allowed to do, whether they were age restricted or whatever. By that I mean you couldn't do anything. You couldn't watch certain movies, you couldn't watch certain TV programs, you couldn't read certain books, magazines, you couldn't play certain games. That might be more so a reflection of nowadays than it was then. You couldn't drink or smoke. I'm not saying either of those is a good thing, but the point I'm trying to make here is when something is age restricted and you tell someone they cannot do it, that's like waving a red flag in front of a bull. It just makes them want to do it. But for me, the one thing that I absolutely just always wanted to do as a kid was drive a car. In my defense, as a kid, obviously, growing up in the 80s, some of the biggest shows on TV, it was an 80s thing, were always sort of based around vehicles. You had The Fall Guy, you had Dukes of Hazzard, you had Street Hawk, right, that's a motorbike. Did you know the actual Street Hawk was bought by a Scotsman and is actually in Glasgow? Random fact, I know. You had Knight Rider, it was in your face, all these amazing vehicles just doing absolutely crazy things. As an impressionable child, you're just like, I just want to drive a car, that looks amazing, I need to drive. And obviously being exposed to it in the sense with family members, relatives, stuff like that, being in the back of, well, as a kid for me, being in the back of cars, as you were driven somewhere, something you couldn't quite understand, but you're just like, this is amazing, I want to drive. So as a kid, one game, because there were driving games, and I love a lot of them, like Outrun, Chase HQ, Pole Position, stuff like that. They weren't driving. I mean, you had a steering wheel, your cabinet sort of threw you around a bit, that wasn't driving. So the first time I came across the full arcade sit-down cab in 1989 was utterly mind-blowing. I'll show you a picture. It's still impressive now, and it's actually quite state-of-the-art back then, because it was the first one of the first polygon sort of driving simulators, because everything else at the time was sprite scaling. Also, you had 3 pedals. You had a clutch pedal and a manual transmission, which is absolutely unheard of. And here's the thing where it starts to get quite impressive. You could actually stall your car. If you didn't change gear correctly, you could actually stall your car. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And as a kid looking at it, because it was polygons graphically, absolutely blew my face off. I think I did get to experience one last time in 2001 in a little diner in Ontario somewhere. I forget it. We were on the way to a lake, and being at that point someone who could drive and had driven for sort of 7-8 years, it was rubbish, because it just, to me, it just didn't feel anything like the mechanics of driving. You know, your clutch was just your gears were, you know, like, and also having to try and drive stand up while using pedals. But I still have nostalgic feelings towards it, and I've just got myself a ROM of it, so I'm going to crack into that on the Mega Drive. But as a kid, it was just like, this was it. This was my one shot, my one chance to, you know, to drive a car, to be all grown up, to be an adult, to be like those grown-ups around me, to a certain degree be like these people on these TV shows, you know, driving all these crazy vehicles. And that, to me, was Hard Drivin was just utterly fantastic. It was my chance, for want of a better term, to live in the grown-up world. And yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I remember the first time I played it, my dad had to stand next to me and give me a really quick driving lesson in an arcade, you know. I guess technically that's my first driving lesson, isn't it? At the age of 12, yeah. On, right, put that pedal in, yeah, put it there, let that pedal up slowly, then as you let it up, push that pedal down, you know, and then that pedal back in, and then pull down, and then back in again and go up. And like, I was just all over the shop, you know, and he was just looking at, just going, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with this game? What is the world coming to? This isn't driving. It'll never catch on. I think he actually said that. But it was, yeah, it's just, look at me. I was doing it really badly, you know. Look at me, I'm driving. Oh my God, this is amazing. It's amazing. But as I said, obviously it's quite limited. And that feeling stayed with me to a certain degree, because I never had it on the Mega Drive back in the day, but it was one of those games I actually borrowed the Japanese version of. The one other kid at school who had a Japanese Mega Drive, and even though I was doing it on a pad. And it gets a lot of flack, but it impressed me the first time I played Hard Drivin on the Mega Drive. You know, again, it just made me feel like an adult, because of all the driving games then, even though it was, you know, as it gets bad flack, there was an environment, there was a driving environment going on, not just moving left and right to avoid cars that were basically flying at you. So, yeah, what games as a kid did you play because, you know, they made you feel grown up? For me, it's Hard Drivin, you know, and it's just funny that when this name got mentioned to me, I just had this massive flashback, and that popped in there, because I can honestly say, as a kid, Hard Drivin to me was just that thing, that game that let me experience a little bit of the adult world I was not supposed to be experiencing. Anyway, would love to know what games, you know, you played as a kid that made you feel grown up. Or maybe I'm the only person who did this. Thank you for watching. See you later.